If you're going to give a state of the art, as I've asked you and you've given, you usually have to say, well, here's what we've done to come to where we are now, but here's what we should do in the future. What is your prescription for, okay, we've done that, we screwed this up, the icon got wounded, it's not dead. What is your suggested plan?
Well, I think first, conceptually, the state and the legislature, I guess especially the legislature, but also the governor, have to see this kind of incentive legislation as a long-term commitment and a long-term promise. And if you want to attach a sunset to it, you take it all the way down to the sunset and don't damage it while, before you get to the sunset. That's exactly what happened here. So aside from people who, may not have invested, there are people who did invest and who have been, irritated and discouraged about making their investment and now losing the tax benefits they thought they were getting. And they treat it, as a welch by the state. The state welched on a promise. And indeed, in some conceptual or moral way, that's exactly what happened. The state welched on them. They're not going to come back too quickly. This blackens our eye yet still again in the halls of Wall Street. And the people who, see what happened, they're not going to be too quick to come around and play the same game. So my first point is that if we do this kind of thing again, we have to stand by our commitment. We have to treat it as a promise. We have to know that investors out there will rely on it, and they will be mighty irritated if they can't rely on it. I mean, it's sort of like our bond rating, Are we credible? Do we get an A for credibility? Answer, no, not on this. The second thing is, as I said before, this is really critical. Am I going on too much?
No, not.
The second thing is this, is if you want to build a tech industry or anything, big like that, this is a huge project, then you have to put it at the top of the priority list. It can't fall down the list anytime anything else comes up. It's got to be there, and you got to remember it's there, and you can't waver and you can't change your mind. It's got to always be there. And if you do that, you'll be able to achieve your goal. If you forget about it, everyone will forget.
You're talking about political will.
I am.
In many instances.
And consistency.
The political will and the consistency continue to fade as 221 became older and
Do you know what happens, Gina?
more known.
They have the House, and the House runs 2-year cycles.
Yes.
And some people go on and on the way you have.
I won't talk about my re-election, but I am.
I will.
Every 2 years, they change. I mean, you have to go and get your card punched again.
Yeah. And the industry, the tech industry, to the extent that it is a lobbying industry, it really isn't. These guys are trying to earn a living, trying to make a company work, and they can't spend all their time walking the halls in the legislature. So it becomes an impossible burden for them. But anyway, so every 2 years, then they have to go and re-educate a new crop. And sometimes that's hard because, things change, everything evolves. And some of the newly elected legislators who have come in since the year 2001, since 221 began, have really not been educated. And they haven't really understood what it was there for in the first place.
Let me footnote that in a way, because I think there's a mindset in the legislature that is more on the social worker and lawyer technical law rather than micro and macroeconomics. I just sense that, as the co-chair of the Small Business Caucus, getting things to the point where 80% of all the jobs are coming out of the private sector, and these are the people who are your constituents who have to be protected, whether they're high-tech or low-tech or whatever. That kind of macroeconomic thinking is a miss. So it's kind of a bit of an uphill battle when you're selling things as sophisticated as Act 221. Some of the language in the bill and some of the language in the lobbying is generally quite obtuse.
I won't argue with that. I do not disagree with that.
Makes it really difficult. Earlier you mentioned, without saying his name, Jeff Au and some of the pushback that may be coming when you said welch on agreement, and Mr. Au is convinced that this is contrary to the Constitution, and he will, if the matter is not vetoed, will be taking this government, me to court, or what? I know we'll have him on another time, but
Yeah, I mean, just in a word, I mean, he feels very, very strongly about this. He has been a very outspoken supporter of 221, even from the beginning. He and I have been talking about 221 since before Linda Lingle was elected. You know, it goes way back. I mean, we were children together. You know? But in any event, right now he is extremely aggravated and agitated about this, and believes that the Constitution has been violated because, you know, specifically, what is it, HB 2401, which he believes takes away rights that, you know, were available, you know, incentive rights, and he got an opinion from a law firm in Washington to that effect, and he is trying to get the governor to veto 2401. Not clear whether she will. If she doesn't, then he has said that he or other people around him will file an action in the federal district court to declare that act unconstitutional.
So part of what the future of 221 may be, I will see you in court if, in effect, the governor does not veto it. What's the implication time-wise, and again, what will that do to the industry if that gets into just a big legal battle?
I don't think it will have that much to do with the industry. It'll have a lot to do with the investors who are, you know.
And there's a difference between the investors and the actual practitioners. And
yeah, but the industry, it doesn't have a direct effect on the industry because I think the damage is already done on the industry. You know, their icon has been, you know, the legislature has so completely telegraphed, you know, that they don't see this as an important priority. Yeah. And what's interesting is that with all of that, with all the anti-221 stuff that has gone on in the last two sessions or before, nobody has actually, the legislature did not come up with anything else to replace it. So when 221 is gone, there's a vacuum. And the message is, we really don't care.
One of my colleagues pushes the idea that, well, we take away the investment tax credit and we put in the research credit. And that's where they say, taking away one, giving with the other, where the actual R&D research is a tax credit and not the investment. That's one of the arguments that's been put forward. Do you buy that argument?
Well, part of the tech industry likes R&D credit. Those are the guys who do R&D. And that's a lot of the dual-use companies do R&D. You know, we're working on defense contractor stuff. But the pure entrepreneurs, you know, who want to put a company together, and R&D is one of the features, but they need to go through that process about getting investment capital. They're on the other side of the fence. So what this has done is it's sort of bifurcated the industry.
Yes, in fact, Jay, some legislation goes faster when there's unity on the side of those who are pushing for the legislation, but I know because the industry is such a diverse investment versus research group, there was kind of a double message that legislators were getting, and sometimes that works to your disadvantage too, or the divide and conquer, and then from there it's a...
I don't know if it was intended that way, but that's the effect. But the bottom line, though, is that if you want to build an industry, you have to get investment capital in. So the investment capital side, in my opinion, is more important. And in Hawaii, we have a dearth of investment capital. There's no large institution here that invests in the tech industry. That hasn't changed. The investment comes from outside. 221 was a wonderful mechanism to generate investment from outside.
Isn't most of the money either East Coast or West Coast when it comes to venture capital?
I don't know what coast, but a lot of the 221 money was from the mainland.